Our gospel reading on this Transfiguration Sunday is taken from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 9 and verses 28 through 36. Listen to what you might hear anew into your life in this reading from the Gospel according to Luke and the story of the Transfiguration. Now, about 8 days after these sayings, that's to say the Sermon on the Plain, about 8 days after these sayings, Jesus took with him Peter, John, and James, and went up on the mountain to pray. And while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which was about to be accomplished in Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep, but since they stayed awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you and one for Moses and one for Elijah," not knowing what he said. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my child, my chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone, and they kept silent. And in those days they told no one any of the things that they had seen. May God bless to our understanding this reading from God's holy word. And to God's name be glory and praise. Amen. Happy Transfiguration Day to you. Transfiguration is always the last Sunday before the holy season of Lent begins. This Wednesday, on Ash Wednesday, in this room at 7 o'clock. I hope you'll be there. What do you think of this reading we just heard? How did they know that it was Elijah and Moses that was standing there with Jesus? What about these weird veils that we hear about in the reading from our Hebrew scriptures? These veils that prevent us from seeing the light, that prevent the light of our own faces from shining out onto the world. Whatever happened up on that Mount of Transfiguration, it was a turning point in Jesus' ministry. Up until this point, as you may know, he had been content with preaching in fields and on beaches and feeding people and healing people and teaching them in Galilee. But with his growing renown, it's now time for him to go to the epicenter of Jewish life, to Jerusalem, where he insists a prophet must go to die, and nobody can talk him out of this. They tried. What really happened up there on the mountain's height? What did those 3 favorite disciples see? If only for a moment, did they see life more clearly? Did they see the way things really are? The way we don't usually see because we've got veils over our faces. Could it be that there at last they saw with fleeting clarity all that life really is, that it's meant to be? The poet Malcolm Geet, oh come on, I don't often inflict poems on you. The poet Malcolm Geet says it like this: "For that one moment in and out of time, on that one mountain where all moments meet, the daily veil that covers the sublime in darkling glass fell dazzled at his feet. There were no angels, full of eyes and wings, just living glory, full of truth and grace. The love that dances at the heart of things shone out upon us from a human face, and to that light, the light in us leaped up. We felt it quicken somewhere deep within. A sudden blaze of long extinguished hope trembled and tingled through the tender skin. Nor can this blackened sky, this darkened scar, eclipse the glimpse of how things really are." How many moments in a lifetime like that do we get where we feel like we understand, if only for a moment, what's going on and what life's about? as if we see clearly, just for an instant, as if we can glimpse how things really are. Have you ever thought that this waking dream of a daily life of ours usually misses the deeper meaning, the deeper truths, the deeper beauties that are hidden below their surfaces? The thing that the poet calls the love that dances at the heart of things. Wouldn't our faces glow too if we could be in touch with that mystery that life is about? Or is it possible that we can't live that way for very long? Is it possible that we need this half-light of our world to protect our human eyes from the glory and the wonders that are too much to look upon? And like Moses, we go around with veiled faces, faces shrouded, half hidden, and the veil hides our glow and it dims our vision. Think of the masks we wear in a lifetime, and I don't mean the 2020 masks. Think of the masks we wear in a lifetime to protect us from the light around us and to hide the brilliance of our own faces. It's kind of alarming when you can't see a person's face. When you're talking to someone and you can't see their face. When I hike in high summer, I do that to people. I hate wearing bug spray. Those toxins that we put on our skin, the reason the mosquitoes don't approach us with that stuff on our skin is because they're smart enough to know. They're like, oh no, not that one. We don't want that one's blood. They're smart enough to know the poisons we're putting on our skin. So instead, over my big hiking hat, I put a black veil. And it keeps the bugs away. But do you know what else it keeps away? People. If you've ever been hiking in the woods and you see somebody walking toward you wearing a black wedding veil, it's creepy, it's scary. I don't mean to scare people. I just don't want to wear that stuff if I can avoid it. I've come across strangers in the forest who've done a double take and kind of made room. I've told you before about the story called The Minister's Black Veil by Nathaniel Hawthorne. That's what I call my veil, the minister's black veil. It's about an old-time New England pastor who shows up for church one Sunday morning wearing a black veil over his face. And nobody knows why, and nobody has the courage to ask him, and he never explains it. And he never takes it off. And his fiancée dumps him. And people stop asking him to do their weddings. And nobody wants him to baptize their child. But they still want him when they get sick. And they still want him when they're grieving or dying, and they still want him to do their funerals because they understand some wisdom about wearing a black veil through life for something other than mosquitoes. Moses comes down from a sacred moment with God up high on the mountain, and his face is all aglow in such a way that people don't know what to make of it. It's illuminated by a holy light, a supreme joy, a wholeness that they're not used to seeing. And so he puts a veil over the fading splendor of that light, that sacred light that brightens his wrinkled and usually fairly severe old face. Jesus, too. He takes his three best friends, Peter, James, and John, up to the top of a mountain, and as he's praying up there, his face is changed, and they see him briefly as he truly is, beloved, at peace, aglow, the way we're all supposed to be, the way we're all supposed to look and act. It's maybe how they and we ought to see every person for the belovedness that is theirs. Jesus' face, too, takes on a holy light of another world, unless perhaps it's the unseen light of this very world. The glow that's supposed to illuminate your face and mine at all times, except that the cares and the worries and the daily preoccupations of our lives cast over it a veil, a blankness, distraction, anxiety. anger. Every human face was meant to glow. Isn't that a strange thought? I can think of some faces that I can't even imagine glowing. And I can think of some pretty sour faces that I have seen glowing in the right moment. Life casts its veil over these faces that are supposed to glow. Veils of self-importance, veils of ego, veils of disappointment, veils of despair, veils of emotions that we have nurtured into our face. Have you not seen a regular grumpy old face transformed with an encounter with, say, the ocean, or the Grand Canyon, or the stars, or some great beauty of tongue or ear or eye that brings us humans back to the half-forgotten love at the heart of our living? We do forget the love at the heart of our living, and our faces show it. Masks. Batman wears one, the Phantom of the Opera wears one, the Lone Ranger wears one, for those of you who remember the Lone Ranger. They all wear masks. Oscar Wilde famously said this, and he said it in gendered language, I apologize. He said, "Man is least himself when he talks in his own person, but give him a mask, and he will tell you the truth." I think that's true. I think that's one of the reasons I like to wear a robe in the pulpit, because it makes me feel empowered to tell you the truth that I might be scared to tell you without it. We talked about that last week in Adult Ed, called it Dumbo's feather. You know how Dumbo didn't know he could fly without his feather? And yet he could. Isn't it interesting how our true selves emerge when we feel anonymous, when we feel masked, when we feel hidden, when we think nobody knows who we are? For example, when you're just an anonymous driver on a busy highway, you can do things you wouldn't do in line at Haas's or the post office. When we're just an unknown stranger leaving a comment at the bottom of an online news story, we might say things that we would not say otherwise. When we catch the eye of someone we will never see again, and we feel no need to hide the desire that they awaken in us, or the curiosity, or the pity. Anonymity can feel like a kind of power, and there are so many places in these lives, these 21st century lives, where we feel so masked and so safe and so anonymous. We like to wear masks because in some sense, when we're masked, we can be who we really are. But then, masking begets masking. If I hide my true self from you, if I do not behave with you in genuine ways, you'll pick up on that. You'll easily read a phony, and you'll feel the need to be phony back to me. Posture and pose and pretend. Impress. And if we do that with each other, the opportunity for real relationship and real connection is lost. Not only do our masks give us a false sense of freedom, they also obscure our vision when we're looking through them. They keep us from seeing our lives and our world as clearly as we should see them. I have to say this. Consider the things that pass for normal in these times in which we're living. We're looking at the world through a veil of such weirdness. How is it normal for people in positions of leadership to give Nazi salutes? This is not normal. What kind of a veil, what kind of a mask are we wearing? Overt racism. The world's most desperately poor being scapegoated by men so rich that they can't even use in 10 or 20 lifetimes all that they've accumulated. I know an orphanage in Honduras. The guy who started it is an acquaintance. It's for children with HIV that will now be without antiretrovirals from USAID because that has been cut by the world's richest man for an amount of money that would be negligible to that man? Are the rich not expected to share? Are the rich not supposed to give back? But we see the world through these veils. And we forget the fundamental truths that, as one book points out, we learned in kindergarten. It is nice to see a face transfigured, a face transformed by joy or by insight. If you've ever been a teacher, you've seen it on the face of one student out there when the rest of them are looking at their phones and doodling, and one student out there gets it. And you think, that is why I teach. That one face all aglow. Better by far to see the world without these veils of sadness and greed through which we so often see it. Let us see the world with our own vision transfigured. Okay, do this. Think of a face that you have almost never seen with a smile. I bet you got one already, don't you? I do. I'm not going to say whether it was a church member or not. Think of a face that you have never seen with a smile. We all know plenty of people whose faces tell us the inner turmoil or unhappiness that is theirs. That face was meant to glow with the joy that is union with God and other people. Masks of sorrow and worry appear on our faces just because of the things that we turn our inner eyes toward or the circumstances under which we live. Very often we look to all the wrong things. We look to the things that scare us, the things that trouble us, the things that keep us angry and stuck and broken, jealous, stressed, sad. The veil of sorrows falls from our eyes when we turn those eyes toward God our source, God our joy, God our life, the deep ocean of all that is good and true and beautiful. Even just looking at things that are good and true and beautiful will help. Each and every face was created for that sacred glow that required Moses to put a veil over his, that Jesus also got on the mountaintop. Each and every face should have moments of transfiguration. What does the world see when it looks at your face? I'm not talking about whether you're attractive or not. Everybody knows that a smile makes everyone attractive. What does the world see in you? Have you ever seen a human face transfigured by the light of another world or the better light of this one? I've seen it. You have too. We've seen it. A face transformed by joy. Anne Lamott says this, and she is one of the best people to quote. Anne Lamott says, "Joy is the best makeup, but a little lipstick is a close runner-up." Except that joy is not makeup. It comes from inside and works outward. And not everyone can get away with wearing lipstick. Joy is what we are created for. It's the look of our unveiled faces. It's what we have when we turn our faces regularly toward the mystery of God, the goodness, the truth, the beauty that we have named God. Then the things that matter in this world and in this life become clearer when the veil is lifted. The veils of worry and doubt are dispelled when we look at what is real, what is good, what is God. We see our lives and we see our world as the things of beauty and wonder and power and mystery that they are. On the mountain, the poet says, "The love that dances at the heart of things shone out upon us from a human face. And to that light, the light in us leaped up." That love does shine from human faces. We've all seen it. But usually it's from the faces that have turned themselves toward the light. What makes your faces glow? What makes your face glow like Moses on the mountain? Maybe that should be your Lenten discipline as Lent begins on Wednesday. Nothing gloomy, not giving up anything you want that you're going to take back up on Easter Day. Maybe your Lenten discipline should be to turn your face toward the things that make it glow. so that you can share that unveiled glow with the world around you. As we begin the Lenten season later this week, let us enter with a new commitment to turn our faces toward the things, the one that makes them glow. Then let us see ourselves and each other as we really are, beloved, at peace, aglow. Amen.